Dr. Faisal Sheikh, can you please share your slides?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Perfectly audible, no problem.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the lovely introduction, ma'am. At the onset, I would like to give the credits of slide preparation to Dr. Mehboob Basade, who prepared the slides, but due to prior commitments, he couldn't present it. He was the original presenter, so I'll be presenting on his behalf.
He's actually free, so probably you can ask him to plug in. He has completed the previous engagement, no problem.
Sure. Thank you. So, if you look at these survival curves of patients with gastric cancer, on the survival curves on the left side, divided on the stage wise, we can see that it is evident that additional treatment is required and surgery alone is not sufficient. So, if you look at the ESMO gastric cancer guidelines with special focus on operable gastric cancer with stage more than T1 N0, there are two approaches which has been recommended. First is the preoperative chemo followed by surgery followed by postoperative chemo, that is the perioperative chemo. And next approach is the surgery followed by either adjuvant chemo or adjuvant RT, chemo RT. So like the aims of neoadjuvant chemotherapy, even perioperative chemotherapy has the same objectives of downstaging the tumor, increasing the R0 resection rate, treating the micrometastatic disease early, and eventually improving the overall survival. In non-Asian countries, it has been seen that there are more neoadjuvant and perioperative chemotherapy given because of the increased incidence of locally advanced patients presenting with advanced disease stage at the time of presentation. So now this is the timeline of neoadjuvant and perioperative chemotherapy. So it was in 2006 where MAGIC trial first introduced the concept of perioperative chemotherapy, where 3 cycles of anthracycline containing triplet regimen was compared with surgery alone. And then it was the Italian FFCD trial, which used doublet chemotherapy as a perioperative chemotherapy compared to surgery alone. And then cross trial, as you all know. And then there was the FLOT4 study, where 4 cycles of FLOT given pre and post operative was compared to 3 cycles of ECX. So coming to the MAGIC trial, it was a British trial by the MRC. Here the eligible patients were given 3 cycles of preoperative ECF followed by 3 to 6 week break, and then surgery at that 6 to 12 week break followed by 3 cycles of post-operative ECF. So along with gastroesophageal and esophageal cancer, gastric cancer comprised of almost 3/4 of the entire patient population. As we can see, these patients had, those who had chemo with surgery had increased incidence of, had increased early T stage, early end stage, and it was evident that perioperative chemotherapy led to tumor downstaging. There was also a statistically significant improvement in the PFS as well as overall survival. Next came the Italian FFCD trial. Here, the eligible patients were given preoperative 2 to 3 cycles of cisplatin 5-FU, followed by surgery, and then 3 to 4 cycles of postoperative cisplatin 5-FU. So along, as we can see, here 2 gastroesophageal and esophageal cancer patients were taken. However, the number of patients having gastric cancer was far less compared to the MAGIC trial. In this trial, also perioperative chemotherapy led to tumor downstaging with more number of early T stage and early end stage in the surgical resected specimen. So the important lesson that we learned from the MAGIC and the FCCD trial is approximately 50% of patients were not fit for post-operative chemotherapy, as you can see in the table. So then came the German trial, that is a FLOT4 study, which compared 4 cycles of FLOT4 followed by resection, followed by 4 cycles of FLOT4, and it was compared to 3 cycles of ECF or ECX given perioperatively. So here too, there was a statistical improvement in the perioperative FLOT chemotherapy increased the proportion of patients who underwent surgical resection, and there was increased R0 resection rate compared to the ECF arm. Surgical morbidity and mortality was not increased by the use of FLOT. So FLOT also showed improvement in the PFS OS. However, this came at a cost. So the patients who received FLOT had a statistically significant increase in the grade 3-4 toxicities, that is diarrhea, neutropenia, and peripheral neuropathy. So the important take-home message with this was that FLOT is the new gold standard therapy for patients who receive perioperative chemotherapy, and those who do not receive triplet, doublet may also be given. However, even with FLOT, the 5-year projected OS was 45%, and therefore we need to do something more besides this. Coming to adjuvant chemotherapy, this is the timeline of the adjuvant chemotherapy. It was in 2001 that INT 0116, which included the McDonald regimen with 5-FU bolus given before, during, and after radiation was started. And then there were the Japanese trials, ACT-CSGS, which gave adjuvant S1 for 1 year compared to surgery alone. And then there was the gastric group meta-analysis 2010, the Korean classic trial, which includes 6 months of Capox compared to surgery alone. Coming to the ACT-GC trial, here patients are randomized to receiving 1 year of S1 versus no further treatment. Though there was improvement in PS, this was not statistically significant. There was the South Korean classic trial where post-operatively patient received 6 months of Capox versus no Capox. Here too, there was an improvement in OS, which was not statistical difference. There was the Japanese JACRO 07 trial, which combined S1 with chemotherapy, that is docetaxel. Here too, there was a improvement in the PFS and OS. So this is the gastric meta-analysis. Here it was seen that there was an absolute OS benefit of 5.8% at 5 years for patients who received adjuvant chemotherapy. So any benefits, is there any benefits of FADI in radiation therapy? So this is an ongoing debate. For patients with gastric adenocarcinoma who receive perioperative chemotherapy, this is better because more patients are able to receive chemotherapy before surgery than after. Also, downstaging improves the risk rates of R0 resection, and in patients where surgery has already performed and neoadjuvant could not be given, adjuvant therapy may be considered. However, for gastroesophageal junctional and esophageal adenocarcinoma, perioperative chemotherapy and neoadjuvant chemo-RT both are reasonably good choices. Among trials which included chemo-RT, this is the NeoRest study wherein eligible patients were randomized to receiving cisplatin 5-FU versus cisplatin 5-FU with radiation therapy. There was no difference in the overall survival among the chemo-RT arm patients. Surgical complications were more so now the trials which will answer the question of the addition of radiation therapy, there is the ESOPEC trial wherein patients will be randomized to receive neoadjuvant chemoradiation therapy as per the cross regimen versus perioperative chemotherapy with FLOT. The results of this is still awaited. Then there is a top care trial which will answer the question of perioperative chemotherapy versus perioperative chemo-RT. Here ECF will be chemotherapy or surgery. So it's not that more is always better. There have been several negative trials also in the adjuvant and neoadjuvant setting. So there have been negative trials of intensification of chemo and adjuvant chemo, addition of RT, intensification of adjuvant chemotherapy, addition of radiation to post-perioperative treatment. None of them were shown to show any advantage in the survival. Coming to the markers of perioperative chemotherapy. So the patients in MAGIC trial, there was a correlation done between TRG and lymph node status, and it was seen that lymph nodes are a very important prognostic marker for patients who undergo resection and chemotherapy. We look at MSI, so it is seen that no benefit to perioperative chemotherapy was seen in MSI high gastric cancer in the patients of MAGIC trial, and the same was also reproduced in patients of classic trial. There was no benefit to adjuvant chemotherapy in MSI high gastric cancer. Coming to PDL1, in classic trial, PDL1 was shown to be prognostic in patients in the trial as whole, and among patients having only MSS, it was seen that chemo appeared to benefit patients who were PDL1 negative with MSS. In the pipeline, there are some prognostic and predictive genetic signature wherein patients will be risk stratified into immune high, stem-like low, stem-like high, epithelial low, and epithelial high. However, this is yet to be validated. So the take-home message is lymph node metastases are an important prognostic marker. MMR deficient tumors do not appear to benefit from perioperative or neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and genetic signatures, gene signatures show promise for selective in chemotherapy. However, this requires validation. This is my last slide. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Now I'd like to call upon our next speaker, Dr. Prasad Narayanan, Senior Consultant Medical Oncologist at SiteCare Cancer Hospital, Bangalore.
good evening. Can I share the screen?
Sir, you can share your
It
screen.
is saying that the host has disabled the participant share screening.
Uh,
I have shared the presentation with the organizers. If that can be shown, that's also fine with me.
Yeah, Vidyut or Jagdish, are you there?
And Fahad has to stop his screen share first, then only.
Dr. Fahad?
I think as a host you will be able to cancel the screen share, so that's okay.
So shall I try again?
Yes, sir, you can try it again.
I think it's fine. Yeah. Fine. So good evening, everybody. We just heard about early gastric cancer and the treatment algorithms, and we'll discuss about in next 15 minutes or so the algorithms in advanced gastric cancer. Gastric cancer, if you take as a global perspective, it's a common disease, and it is more common in Karnataka, from where I practice in Bangalore. And it's the fifth most common malignancy in the world, but more than that, it's third leading cause of cancer death. This is global data. And almost 2/3 of the patients present with metastatic disease at diagnosis, which is very quite high. And if you take what happens to these metastatic patients or advanced gastric cancer patients, we haven't had much improvement actually. Our 5-year survival rate, which was 2.5%, has only gone up to 5% actually. So there's nothing much to say about great improvement in outcomes in metastatic gastric cancer. So what are the biomarkers that we do in metastatic gastric cancer patients? We get mostly a HER2/neu testing done, a PD-L1 and MSI, and not very common that we get an NTRK test done. So I will go with why we do these tests actually. So HER2/neu positive metastatic gastric cancer is treated in a different manner, because we know that there is more possibility of a HER2/neu positivity in a gastroesophageal junction and intestinal type, almost 32%, which is almost 1/3 of the patients might have the HER2/neu positivity, which is quite good to check actually. And as in the breast cancer, it is based on the IHC first, and if it is 3+, the patient can go for targeted therapy with trastuzumab, and if it is equivocal, we go for the FISH testing. And why do we do this? That is because there is this trial, which is a landmark trial in metastatic gastric cancer called the TOGA trial, where addition of trastuzumab to chemotherapy, which was 5FU and cisplatin in this scenario, actually improved the median overall survival. So then coming to the next point, that was the MSI testing and PD-L1 testing. These are the most talked about tests in medical oncology these days, because they decide on a patient's participation or improvement with immunotherapy. So this is the ESMO clinical practice guidelines, which is what I would use to say about the algorithm. So if you are planning chemotherapy, if the patient is unfit, the patient goes for best supportive care. If the patient is planned for chemotherapy, the first thing is to see if the patient is HER2/neu negative or positive. And if the patient is HER2/neu negative, it is a combination of fluoropyrimidine and platinum based doublet or triplet. I'll come to that in detail. If it is HER2 positive, as based on the TOGA trial, we go for trastuzumab plus chemo. And then at progression, the patients are decided for second line therapy, which is based on the performance score of the patient. And it could either be a combination therapy of paclitaxel with ramucirumab, or if the patient qualifies for immunotherapy, that is if the patient has got an MSI high, the patient can go for immunotherapy. This is similar in the patients who are ECOG performance status 2 as well. But in performance status 3 and 4, we go for symptom control. So why we decide on this first line therapy? So what happens in a patient with first line therapy who is HER2/neu negative? So there are this debate on doublet versus triplet treatments in first line, and these are the trials, or these are the protocols which are followed. It could either be a combination of epirubicin with either oxaliplatin, or epirubicin in combination with cisplatin and 5FU. as a triplet regime, or a combination of adding a taxane to the cisplatin 5FU baseline. So what has it done is that it has improved the response rates, maybe by 10%, and it has also improved slightly the time to progression, but the improvement in overall survival hasn't been much by giving triplet regimes. And these triplet regimes are not quite easy to give. They are quite toxic, and there are serious toxicities which are seen. So basically, if you say the standard first line treatment, if you add taxanes to make it from a doublet to a triplet regime, we actually get some improvement in the response rate, but that does not translate much in terms of overall survival. So when you are talking about a metastatic incurable disease, this is something which we don't want to do when we are looking at not much improvement in overall survival. And that is why the NCCN guidelines and all the other guidelines also consider now 2 drug cytotoxic regimens because of lower toxicity, and 3 drugs is reserved for medically fit patients with good performance status and access to frequent toxicity evaluation, and oxaliplatin is the preferred over cisplatin. So mostly in a first line metastatic gastric cancer, now the preferred protocol will be either a combination of FOLFOX, which is 5FU and oxaliplatin with leucovorin, or capecitabine with oxaliplatin, which is called Xelox protocol. And what do we do in second line? Because invariably these patients will progress, and before the target therapy called ramucirumab, we had these trials which looked at either giving a single agent docetaxel or irinotecan or paclitaxel, which all gave us a reasonable, not great responses, but almost similar kind of responses where a patient will survive for around 4 to 5 months in second line with a progression-free survival of around 2.5 to 3 months. And the response rates were hardly around 10% in the second line. And then this is the landmark trial, which is with this drug called ramucirumab, which established the second line standard of care in combination with the paclitaxel. And there was an improvement in progression-free survival. Numerically, this is around 52% improvement, but the progression-free survival that we get here is around 4 months, which was around 2 months otherwise. And there was an improvement in overall survival as well. So more than the numerical improvement, I think if you are able to give a patient paclitaxel and ramucirumab, about 72% of the patients will survive for 6 months and around 40% for 12 months, which in second line was not seen before this drug came. And there is a single agent ramucirumab data as well. So patients who are borderline performance status or there is any contraindication for chemotherapy, single agent data is also available, but the responses are not as good as the combination. So it is reserved for patients who cannot tolerate chemotherapy. So this establishes the second line options in terms of either giving a combination of paclitaxel with ramucirumab or giving a single agent chemotherapy as based on the previous trials of either docetaxel, paclitaxel, irinotecan, or even a single agent ramucirumab. Now there are third line options, the TAS-102, which is not available in India as such, and then the immunotherapy options have come in gastric cancer as well. This is the data which established the trifluridine tipiracil versus placebo. Interesting data because this is a third line trial actually, and there was some significant improvement in median overall survival in these patients. In third line, if you get a median overall survival of 5.7 months, it is interesting to see. Then about the role of immunotherapy here. And this is the trial which looked at pembrolizumab in patients with advanced gastric or gastroesophageal. It's called the Keynote-059. It's a phase 2 trial, which actually showed some response rates in usually like in immunotherapy patients around 11 to 15% response rate is what we get. So this led to there was also a trial which looked at nivolumab, the other immunotherapy drug in the same indication. And there were a group of patients who responded. So these are curves which look similar to the immunotherapy curves in many other cancers, and this led to the interest in immunotherapy. So this was a trial which actually tried to qualify this better, and by choosing patients, by seeing whether they were PD-L1 positive or not. Though it is not a very robust biomarker, that is what we have at this point of time to decide on some patients to give immunotherapy. So this trial looked at, it took around almost 600 patients and stratified based on the PD-L1 assessment of either one more, the CPS score of more than or equal to 1, more than or equal to 5, more than or equal to 10. So there was a graded response in which by the patients who had a CPS score of more than or equal to 10 had the best outcome in terms of median overall survival improvement, and the patients who were CPS score of more than or equal to 1 also had some improvement, but not as good as the ones who were more than or equal to 10. And there was no subgroup based decision which we can make about whether any patient is having better response to immunotherapy. Similarly, in PFS also, the outcomes were better in the patients who had a CPS score of more than or equal to 10. So this trial concluded that there is a numerically prolonged overall survival over paclitaxel, and with PD-L1 enrichment, there is some increasing benefit, and there was no difference in PFS which was seen. Response rates were also numerically higher, but it was not an overall a study which establishes immunotherapy in second line. So I think I will summarize with that. So gastric cancer is a serious and hard to treat. It remains so. And there is no clear first line standard of treatment. But at this point of time, when we are looking at a second line option with ramucirumab in combination with taxanes, most of us actually don't use taxanes in first line, and the first line treatment remains a 5-fluorouracil plus platinum combination, and most of the most common protocol which is used is either a FOLFOX or XELOX protocol. If a patient has got lot of visceral disease, lot of symptoms and needs some immediate response to therapy, sometimes a triplet protocol is used in the first time. The second line treatment is pretty much standard, and if the patient can afford ramucirumab, then the treatment is to give the patient a paclitaxel plus ramucirumab combination. This also depends upon the patient's performance status, comorbid conditions, and previous results of first-line chemotherapy. And definitely a multidisciplinary approach is essential to get best results by giving optimal therapy. I think I'll stop there and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fahad and Dr. Prasad, for giving such a wonderful talk and enlightening us. Now, I'd like to call upon our chairperson, Dr. Asha Kapadia and Dr. Raghunandha Rao to give a concluding remarks.
Both the talks are very balanced. Neither of them went overboard. Prasad Narayan was, as usual, excellent. Dr. Prasad Narayan, for your information, the states of Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, Kashmir and the far eastern states actually report the highest incidence of stomach cancer.
Sure, sir.
If we actually map how this cancer probably would have started and trace the route, it will be the route by which Vasco da Gama discovered India, the route to India. So the Chile probably originated from Chile. The Spaniards conquering South America, it reached the shores of Spain and Portugal. And there it was brought to India, and the southern states actually captured it. To be very frank, the northeastern states had some variety of chilies by themselves. In fact, most pungent chili in the world is from the northeastern state of Nagaland. So you don't find that anywhere else in the world. So that is what is common to all of us. Also Kashmiris who love their chili very much. So we share that with everybody. Well, is it the green chili or the red chili? The debate went on, but we are not very sure. We did try to do whether we have the Helicobacter pylori gene discoverable in any of our gastric cancers. was not found at all. There was a large body of information brought out by Dr. D.N. Reddy, Dr. D. Nageswar Reddy from the Asian Institute of Gastroenterology in Hyderabad. He said, no, it's not nowhere related to Helicobacter pylori as most of us think. Gastric cancer in India is at least not related to that. So I leave that there, but wonderful talks by both of you, especially with regard to the GE junction tumors. A little bit more difficult to treat than perhaps the gastric cancer. But by and large, what we found was that the preoperative chemotherapy in gastric cancer is not always successful, but can render those who are on the borderline, about 25% of them get completion or curative surgery. Over to Dr. Asha Kapadia for her comments.
Thank you.
Raghu, you did very well. That GERD is always an issue in Indian patients, and we all are becoming fatter with the better food. And having a GE junction malignancy, numbers I'm sure going to increase, and challenges are going to remain the same and more maybe. And let's see what our results are. And I would really feel that we should have our Indian results. And one of these days we are in the map in the world to contribute.
Once again, thanks for the organizers for giving Dr. Kapadia and myself the opportunity to share this session. Over to the organizers, please.
Okay. So we start with the panel discussion, and now I'd like to invite our chairperson, Dr. S.H. Advani, Director of Medical Oncology, Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai, and Dr. Sanjay Sharma, Director of Asian Cancer Institute and Professor of Surgical Oncology, Asian Cancer Institute and Lilavati Hospital, Mumbai.
Over to you, Dr. Sanjay Sharma. Dr. Advani will join in a while, sir.
Hi, good evening. Can I be heard there?
Yes, sir, you are.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I thank Advait and Dr. Chajinder Singh to have given myself and Dr. Advani the opportunity to participate in this symposium. GE junction is one of my favorite subjects. As you know, I have a little bit of work in esophagus and GE junction, and I am always keen to participate. And with youngsters participating, it gives a lot of enthusiasm for me to carry on. Anyway, Dr. Advani will join, so I hereby invite our chair moderator, Dr. Viraj Lavingia from Medical Oncology from Ahmedabad. The other panelists are Dr. Rakesh Roy from Kolkata, Dr. Akshay Karpe from Medical Oncology from Mumbai, Jagdish Bhai Kotari he's a very good friend of mine. Hi, Jagdish. He's a good surgeon from Ahmedabad. Ajay Kolse is a colleague in Mumbai. He's a radiation oncologist. Dr. Rahul Jaiswal, Dr. Uma Dangi from Fortis Hospital, and Sandeep Dey is a radiation oncologist at the Apollo Hospital. And my colleague and friend is the surgeon Sanket Mehta, who has done tremendous amount of work in Mumbai vis-a-vis in terms of peritonectomy and locally advanced stomach cancer. So we'll have a complete horizon of all the people who are doing a lot of work on stomach and GE junction. Over to you, Rakesh, or rather...
Thank you, sir. So thank you.
Go over to Viraj.
Right, so thank you. Thank you, chairpersons. Thank you, Advait, and thank you, Dr. Tejinder Singh, for having me here. I have a request to all of my panelists to turn on their video. Since I have not brought any slides, I would want to question you directly, so if I can see them. Dr. Rakesh Roy, yes, I can see you. Dr. Uma. Dr. Sandeep Dey has logged in. He's the only radiation oncologist on our panel.
Yeah, Ajay Kolse is there. Ajay is there.
Ajay.
Yeah, he is the radiation, and Dr. Sandeep is even joining. Dr. Ajay is radiation oncologist, and Dr.
Great.
Sandeep is even joining.
Great. So we have 4 medical oncologists. Dr. Sanjay Sharma, sir, if I can request you to be present during panel discussion.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Great. So can I have my slides, Rekha? The slides are with you.
Jagdish, can you play the slides?
So as you can see, I have just 3 slides for the next 45-minute discussion. That means all of you are going to talk and I'm going to sit and listen. All right. So next slide, please. By the way, Grand Rounds, if there are any students hearing us, was one of the go-to place for me to get educated myself. One of the most wonderful series from JCO. I think so they do 4 or 5 every year. And I have read more Grand Rounds rather than Debitor, and it has helped me a lot. So I think so we will follow the same format what JCO decides about Grand Round. Next slide. So this slide, next slide please. So this slide we will keep it for next 10-15 minutes, and we will discuss this case and various aspects of it. So let me go through it. It's a squamous cell carcinoma of mid-esophagus. So 67-year-old male, he is a physician, well-renowned physician of the town. He had a progressive dysphagia for last 3 months, has lost about 10 kilos weight. He does not have any comorbidities, no family history, performance status excellent. He can eat crushed diet, but he has problems swallowing roti, right? The scopy shows a concentric lesion from 30 centimeters from incisor. The scope could not be negotiated beyond. And the CT thorax abdomen pelvis shows it's the mid-esophageal lesion, about 9 centimeter in length, extending right up to G junction. Thickness of about 2.1 centimeter with periesophageal fats trending, but there was no involvement of any major vessels or the heart. There was no evidence of TOF, at least on the CT scan. There are few enlarged paratracheal lymph nodes. Largest was 1.3 centimeters. No distant metastasis on the CT. Biopsy is moderately differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. So let me begin with my medical oncologist. I see Rahul. Rahul, any more investigations do you want for this gentleman? Like PET scan or bronchoscopy or EUS, what have you, anything?
Generally, most of the time, because we are planning treatment and this seems to be curative, we will go with a curative intent treatment, and we don't want to miss any metastasis. So most of the times, we go for PET scan until unless patient refuses for that.
So in a
CT scan, abdomen, pelvis
carcinoma with a CT-TAP, you would want a PET scan before moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is not compulsory, but yes, most of the times we get a PET scan.
What would you want? You want
any distant metastasis. Distant metastasis.
So Dr. Uma from Mumbai, what about you, madam? Would you want a PET scan or CT-TAP is enough?
So I would want a PET scan basically because I would probably contemplate a neoadjuvant therapy in this patient, and to assess response, I think PET CT would be slightly better. So that is probably the reason why I would want to do a PET scan in this patient.
Excellent. Dr. Sanjay Sharma, I have a question. Since the panel agrees that this patient probably will go for curative intent, do you do bronchoscopy in your practice in such a nasty disease?
This lesion, no. Any lesion which is supracardial, yes. Below, no. But I agree with the panelists. I would not do a plain CT scan. I would do a PET CT scan. It's helpful in seeing the lesions which you believe sometime are not there. For example, even a lesion like this, you'll be surprised that there is no periesophageal node. Many a time we have seen only a single node up in the mediastinum in a right paralateral node or a left hand, and this is still a single node, say still is T1 and 1 or T2 and 1 or T3 and 1. So that's the reason why we need to do all that, and further treatment is based on the location of the node, which is such a long stretch area it's best is to do a PET scan, and it also gives you an assessment of response rate to the chemotherapy. And I agree with my colleague, we give adjuvant therapy.
Okay, great point, sir. Dr. Jagdish Kothari, sir, we have students here. Can you tell us what is your concept about nutrition in these patients who have diet and they are going on the journey of a neoadjuvant so-called therapy? What do you think about feeding for this patient?
So you have mentioned that he has lost significant weight, 10 kg, and 67-year-old gentleman. My approach for this patient is it's a curative treatment that I'm planning, and what I talk to my patient always is that I'm going to give you real powerful treatment, 2 arms of powerful treatment, chemoradiation and then the surgery. So it's very, very important that his diet is properly maintained. At this stage, if he is certain about taking about 2,500 calories with the help of dietitian, I would be okay to straight away go ahead with the treatment, keeping in mind at any point of time, if I have to consider which, as per our protocol, I would do either of the 2 things, that would be PEG or stent in this patient, covered stent. I know it can be a controversial to talk about it, but I keep that option open, but being certain that he has to be fed properly. Can I would like to make a small comment on the previous discussion that you had mentioned about the imaging in this patient. So, Viraj, one important point I would like to make sure that my CT scan or PET scan, whatever has been done, clearly delineates the level 5, 6, and all the recurrent RP and recurrent Lehninger nerve nodes as well, because I'm going to give him neoadjuvant chemoradiation, and then I'm planning for the surgery. I want to make sure that what kind of lymphadenectomy this patient is going to require. That's what I would like to make sure at the beginning of the treatment, because it might disappear after giving neoadjuvant chemoradiation.
Okay, fair point, sir. Dr. Ajay, if I may come to you, all the panelists, seem to pass on the message that this patient should go for neoadjuvant radiation with or without chemotherapy. Do you encounter such a patient where you consider definitive chemoradiation rather than neoadjuvant? What is your opinion, Dr. Ajay? You need to unmute yourself.
So basically, a case like this should be discussed in a multidisciplinary team, and we have to ask a surgeon whether he is going to go ahead with the surgery means after the neoadjuvant chemoradiation.
Why don't you ask him? Sanjay Sharma,
sorry, because no, see, with a 9 centimeter tumor, the area of radiation will be very large to treat, because whenever we see a gross disease, from there we go up 3.5 centimeter up and 3.5 centimeter. So entirely the entire esophagus will take into the radiation feed.
So would you consider definitive CRT for this patient?
Majority of
CRT for this patient. When?
See, first though I'll take a surgeon's opinion whether he is going to go ahead with the surgery or not for this patient. So if he says ki I'm going because majority what happens the surgeons they say ki after chemoradiation they are not comfortable operating. Many times I've seen ki surgeons say ki they are not comfortable, so they go ahead with neoadjuvant chemotherapy, and then they go ahead with do the assessment and then
rip us apart. Wait, let me go to Dr. Sandeep. He has a point to make. Sir, would you consider this patient for definitive chemoradiation?
Yeah, I would prefer this patient for a neoadjuvant chemoradiation followed by surgery, Because looking at the clinical features, it doesn't look to me that it's not amenable for surgery. I think sir is there, he would point it out. So I would prefer going for neoadjuvant CTRT followed by the surgery.
Correct. So in your experience, because let's all agree, in India, still majority of patients post 60 years of squamous cell mediasophagus do go for definitive chemoradiation. So I want your opinion. Do you encounter such things in your practice?
Can I intervene?
Yes, sir. I'm coming back. I want.
Okay, you let the youngsters speak. Then I'll talk.
Right, sir. Dr. Sandeep, do you do definitive chemoradiation in your practice for a mid-esophageal squamous cell carcinoma?
Yeah, we do.
Apart from patient factors.
Of course, we do. Depending on not purely clinical things, medically, because of medical reasons, basically.
Okay, so if unfit for surgery,
unfit for any kind of surgery, and we know the results are quite good with definitive CTRT.
There you go. So can you elaborate what are the 5 years survival with definitive chemoradiation for this patient?
I joined in a little late though, so let me see.
We didn't discuss at all, so this is the only slide I've got.
Okay.
So I think so it's at least 30-35%.
30-35%, I would say.
Right. So Dr. Sanjay sir, you were telling?
Okay, see here, I beg to differ, and I wish we had that debate of flot versus cross in the.
We will come to that, sir. Next case is about that.
So if that is the case, then I will only have to say that in Mumbai, most of our institutions, we for a case like this, which are amenable to surgical resections, we are mostly giving chemotherapy first. And especially for a chemotherapy lesion like lower third, we believe flot is the best treatment. We don't go for a cross.
That's for adenocarcinoma, sir. This is a squamous.
No, I mean even for squamous,
okay.
And not giving radiation therapy. Either we give a Cunningham regime, or still go for a flot. Basically, adenocarcinoma yes, flot, and we are not radiating the patient at all. We believe that radical dissection that we did is not necessary, and in my small experience of almost 1,000 sections, my local recurrence, my positive margin rate is just about 0.001%.
Right. So I was trained in Mumbai.
The response with chemotherapy is better. Our patients are bad lungs; they are not really class. But if there's a small lesion, G junction, it's more right you radiate. You have to have a node up in the paracetal area, which my friend Jagdish was talking about. And that is the only area, and you have a lesion down below in the abdomen. To give a radiation right up there is very, very difficult. And in my opinion, the giving neoadjuvant chemotherapy is equally effective. And surgical resection, as I said, it depends on surgeon. If you believe that he can go up to the margin, and we have a negative margin, as I mentioned in 1,000 cases that I have done a 3-field dissection, I personally don't see. And same thing is happening in Tata. Now they are doing a trial between chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Let's wait. Till now, we don't have an evidence whether this is better.
I get you, sir. So I was trained in Mumbai, and what I was saying is there is a sense of doing neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by radiation and then going for surgery called as intensifying neoadjuvant therapy. So Dr. Asha, let me come to you. Do you do this in your clinical practice where you will give 3 cycles of chemo and then reassess for radiation, since this is a large segment, and then go for surgery like tri-modality therapy? Do you do that in practice, Dr. Asha?
No, I don't do that. Basically, as Dr. Sanjay Sharma has rightly pointed out, there will be really few candidates who actually can go for NSAID-RT followed by surgery. You will have only 2 categories. Either you might give some borderline where you will just give neoadjuvant chemotherapy, maybe improve their nutrition and then consider for the surgery, or those who are absolutely fit where you have given NSAID-RT followed by the surgery. The other point I just wanted to highlight, usually if I'm using pre-operative chemotherapy, then usually we go ahead with we discuss in the multidisciplinary meeting. If the surgeon says yes, this is operable, we go ahead with the surgery, and then based on the histopathological report, if there is a node positivity or is there, then we consider adjuvant RT.
In squamous cell carcinoma?
No, not in squamous.
No, so let's discuss. So we have adenocarcinoma case coming next. So this is squamous cell carcinoma.
So regarding this case, see, the thing is that that's why I'm saying we have to decide at the beginning, as Dr. Ajay said, whether this will be operable or not. That is the main thing. If there are patient-related factors, which is anyway preclude surgery, then definitely chemoradiation will be there. But if there is a patient is having a borderline PS, then I think like Dr. Sanjay Sharma has said, majority, I mean, if I really have to classify in my, say, real practice, real world scenario, 60% will go like Dr. Sanjay Sharma's experience, they will receive some pre-operative chemotherapy and they will go for the surgery. There is a cross trial which we are always comparing, there is a NSAID-RT which we say. So NSAID-RT and followed by surgery will be almost 20 to 30%, but 10% will be straightway will be going for definitive chemoradiation.
Great.
Dr. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
So Ashay, you mentioned about post-operative RT for these patients.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is, if you think patient is, if you want to do a neoadjuvant therapy because patient is not clinically fit maybe for surgery, you think they will be able to tolerate post-operative RT? Have you seen how good is the tolerance?
No. What I'm just trying to tell you, see, the thing is that what happens in many of our patients, they're nutritionally very fragile. So what we need to do by giving this pre-operative chemotherapy, where you can adjust the intensity plus you can control the disease and improve the nutrition as well, because this is the time which is there 2 to 3 months. See, if the patient is absolutely not fit because of his comorbidities or maybe the clinical condition, the scenario becomes difficult. But majority of these patients may be fragile because of their poor oral intake in last 2 to 3 months.
You don't do a feeding jejunostomy in such a patient if you feel that the nutrition is poor. One can consider a feeding jejunostomy to improve nutrition and then,
That's what I'm saying. So we can buy the time. See, because if we really just giving nutrition only, I don't think we will be going anywhere. So, I usually plan them pre-operative. See, we have 5-FU cisplatin, 5-FU oxaliplatin, whatever the different regimens. But still, we are also using taxane platinum. Even in practice, we have given, though it is not recommended, weekly paclitaxel, carboplatin, something of that sort of regimens in the frail patients, where we use these regimens, improve the nutrition, and then take it up for the surgery.
Thank you, Dr. Ashay. Dr. Rakesh, one last question before we move on to the next case. What type of chemotherapy do you use in chemoradiation? Do you use a taxane or a standard cis-5-FU?
No, Dr. Viraj. We have been using the cross protocol, that is paclitaxel weekly along with carboplatin. We don't actually do much of cisplatin because cisplatin causes paralysis, and because these patients have some amount of obstruction, paclitaxel and AUC2 of carboplatin is reasonable. Paclitaxel would be 50 milligram per meter square. That's what we practice, not the 60 milligram as in lung cancer. So that's what we follow.
Okay, great. So if I can summarize this case before we move on. So for any resectable case and operable case of middle esophagus squamous cell carcinoma, the panel believes the best treatment to go ahead is neoadjuvant chemoradiation, typically cross protocol and then going for surgery. All right. And PET scan is the preferred staging modality. Okay, let's go next slide, please.
If I may say here, if you don't want to do a PET scan, the neck has not been assessed in this CT. So in esophagus, one would also want to assess the neck.
Usually thorax will include that, madam.
Mentioned it's thorax, abdomen and pelvis. So that's the reason I mentioned.
Sure. Okay, in the next slide, the GE junction adenocarcinoma. So this is the second case. 48 male young fellow. Dysphagia is there for 3 months, but there is no weight loss at all. No comorbidities, no family history, PS01, can eat full diet. Scopy shows a 3 centimeter ulcerated lesion at 38 centimeters from incisor. Scope could not be negotiated. And the CTTAP shows concentric thickening at lower esophagus extending to gastric cardia. Length involved is 4 centimeters. There is a perigastric fat spreading. Few enlarged perigastric lymph nodes, largest 1.3 centimeters, no distant metastasis. Biopsy is moderately differentiated adenocarcinoma. Now, let me come to Rahul again. Rahul, is the biopsy report enough? Do you do any HER2 testing in this patient? Do you ask commonly?
HER2 testing, if it is not metastatic, we don't do HER2 testing.
If it is not metastatic, you don't do HER2 testing. Any medical oncologist would want to do a HER2 testing in this patient if it's not metastatic? No? Okay. So the reason why I asked this, there was a trial this
Patient of trastuzumab in neoadjuvant setting.
Correct. So RTOG, which was negative with cross, and trastuzumab plus pertuzumab caused tripling of PAT-CR rates in HER2 positive gastric cancer. So probably something to keep in mind for future, probably in a year or two, we might find it. Well, dual HER2 targeting probably will come in earlier stage. Okay, so now Dr. Sanjay Sharma, the question that you've been waiting for, cross versus FLOT. As a surgeon, this patient comes to you. Where will you send this patient? To your radiation oncologist or to your medical oncologist?
My medical oncologist. FLOT.
So you'll go for FLOT.
Always.
Wow. Okay, all case. Dr. Sandeep and Dr. Ajay, I want you to both come in. It's a small, tiny lesion of 4 centimeter. G junction, typically C1 because it's starting from lower.
It's not, Viraj, it's not the length. It's the infiltration beyond that's more important. Length is not very important.
Correct. So let's have the radiation oncologist opinion.
So for me, it's the breadth is important. Length is obviously for radiation. You always have a standard.
It's a T3 lesion, sir. It's a T3.
You know, Sandeep Day and all Ajay and all these people will know that. But my take would be radiation and all varies differently in patients, as Jagdish was mentioning, that in such cases we may have a node lower down, right, up to level 14 or level 11 or higher up in level 6, 106. Then it makes a difference. So that's why I still believe, and I especially it's not type 3 lesion. In all such cases, I still believe chemotherapy is the best option. And I give at least an adenocarcinoma mostly.
Correct. But I just wanted to point out there is no evidence to choosing one over the other. Dr. Sandeep, what do you think? T3 lesions, small nodes,
T3
nodes?
with N positive adenocarcinoma in the gastroesophageal junction.
But one disease.
Yeah, tri-modality therapy would be the best, what evidence suggests, and it is statistically significant. So I would definitely go for chemoradiation. There are a lot of, it can be this way basically. There are 3 modalities basically, either a perioperative chemotherapy or a chemoradiation therapy. So we don't have any statistically significant evidence between choosing either of that 2. But always, if we look at CTRT versus only CT, there is always a trend towards a survival benefit in the CTRT group. So
I beg to, excuse me, I beg to differ. There is no head-to-head trial between the 2.
There is so far no head-to-head.
That's the precise reason.
Let me bring Dr. Jagdish Bukhari. Let me have another surgeon's opinion.
One minute. I know Rakesh Khatna is there. See, they believe, because I certainly believe that you can go as much as wide, and for me,
sir still believes in FLOT.
Listen to me. That is the reason I wanted that debate was essential, which probably was initial program, FLOT versus cross. That's a good debate. At this moment of time, we have institutional-based practices which are going on, and it depends on the team which is treating. So if Sandeep feels and Rakesh Khatna feels that their team is giving good radiation therapy, their lung damage are less, are good in that sense, I'm happy they are doing it and the result counts. For me, happy with FLOT, and as I said, R0 clearance is most relevant.
So I just have one question.
That we have head-to-head trial, I don't think that should change.
Sure, I get your point, sir. Dr. Jagdish Kothari, if I can ask you for CWAT1, what are your main concerns vis-a-vis chemo versus radiation? What are your thoughts on that?
So, so CWAT1, I'm more inclined towards chemoradiation. The only exception could be where I would prefer chemotherapy over chemoradiation is that suppose if this patient has got a poorly differentiated histology, that's where I'm more concerned about the ultimate metastatic potential. That's where I would consider this as a choice over this. Otherwise, I think we have a choice of CWAT1, cross-trial, neoadjuvant chemoradiation is the choice. CWAT2 and 3, we are different.
Sure. Just for Dr. Ajay, just one question. Before you make the point, will you ever consider this patient for definitive chemoradiation in adenocarcinoma?
No. I'm agreeing to Dr. Sandeep what he said. Neoadjuvant chemoradiation. The reason is if you give chemotherapy upfront and then surgery, and if it turns out to be node positive, adeno-CA node positive, but with adjuvant. No, but with adjuvant radiation, the morbidity will be much more higher than what you give upfront in a neoadjuvant setting.
Okay, all right. Dr. Sandeep,
just a
make your point.
No, I have one small question, Dr. Tejinder, Viraj. So I think this anyway, the question comes is that now radiation oncologists are saying that radiation is and CTRT is better. We have medical oncologists who are thinking more of FLOT. But I have one simple question to ask to Sandeep and Ajay is that which particular subset of patient you will not think in giving CTRT? With G junction adeno. That is what my question is for you.
If the tumor size is more than 6 to 7 centimeter in length and more than 5 centimeter in width, diffuse infiltration, I would rather go it with gross nodes involved. I would rather go it with the chemotherapy upfront.
So you will consider CWAT 1, 2, 3 also in that?
I would go ahead with
Viraj, sorry.
Yeah, CWAT 3, we all agree we should treat it like gastric cancer, and
that's what the question lies. I think the whole question lies is very clear here is that which we know the cross is there, FLOT is there. The FLOT, the biggest disadvantage is that the completion of FLOT is not so easy. We love giving FLOT, but after the surgery is over, hardly 40%, 30%, Viraj and everyone is there. They know that it's very difficult to complete the chemotherapy.
Correct.
Whereas in cross, somehow the acceptance was very good. That's a different thing. But somewhere down the line, we have to put certain subset of patient, like Ajay was telling. We are looking at the length also. That is what Dr. Sanjay was very clear that we don't look at the length. Ajay was telling we look at the length for the radiation part. So there are certain length and width is important. So Sandeep, you agree with this point?
The CWAT 1 definitely it will be taken as something like a esophageal one. 2 and 3 more like a stomach tumor. 2 are definitely a small percentage of patients can go ahead with esophageal one, but majority of them would be treated like a stomach one. I just need to make a point that the only trial of neoadjuvant chemotherapy alone versus CTRT in the neoadjuvant setting, we have the German POET trial, right? Yes. So in that, there is no, if we look at it critically, the PCR rates are much higher, the negativity of the nodes are much higher, and at 46 months,
Sandeep, that has not translated to the any overall survival advantage.
No, but if you look at the 46-month, the median survival, the trend is towards the better survival at 3 years. And
but there was an updated report in the longer follow-up also. It never showed
OS. But more patients were alive in the CT arm compared to the CT arm in the longer follow-up, which is 84 months.
So I think
I want to count here, Sandeep and Tejinder. See, I'm not against radiation therapy, but the problem is if you see the real world, how many Sandeep there are there, how many cases are there treated in India with that high-end machine that we are talking about, or a precise radiation therapy. Here, if a patient comes after radiotherapy, the patient is not able to withstand the surgery. The surgery is still the mainstay, and that you're forgetting about.
So we are all practicing.
So we are very clear with the surgery part.
Sir, with a very low dose.
41.4 grains, 23 fraction. That's all we are giving, sir.
It's a very low dose.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It is sometimes very difficult. You come and see my surgery after chemotherapy, therapy. I'll tell you the difference how a surgery.
All right. So let me.
My survival is no different in G junction.
Great. So I think so. We have a debate of FLOT versus cross later. So I would just like to summarize.
Okay, then leave it for the debate.
I'll just put my point as a final point.
Sure. Can I ask a question to you regarding this? Viraj, can I ask you a question? I'm Advait.
Advait, yes.
So we generally are seeing quite younger population in our country who present with G junction. What is the opinion of the panel regarding treating a younger patient versus treating a a slightly older patient, with what type of therapy would they actually prefer, going for cross or going for flot? Young patients with GE junction adenocarcinomas. We have about people who come in that early 30s. Who come with,
So if I can answer this, so until ESOPEC, it will always be a debate, right? One group will always say cross, one group will always say flot. But if you want to dissect it scientifically, in GE junction or in gastric cancer, it's not the PAT-CR which correlates with survival. It's the N0 or called node negativity which correlates with survival. And if you see all like ECAF or flot or cross, the maximum N0 is with cross. So until then, I don't think we can keep the radiation out from the picture, even in adenocarcinoma GE junction. So we at SPG and Jagdish Kothari, we follow CWAT 1 cross, 2 and 3 we go for flot. And I think so let's end it there. Now, one question before we move on to the third question, Dr. Rakesh, I want to ask, let's say for this, we did a cross regimen, okay? And we did a surgery, and surgery showed T4N3. T4N3. Okay, that's the histopath report, and you've done the cross regimen. Would you consider adjuvant chemotherapy in this patient, Dr. Rakesh?
Yeah, Dr. Viraj, honestly speaking, if you have a T4 lesion right at the beginning, I wouldn't have practiced or wouldn't have enforced the protocol of cross. I would have probably gone for a chemotherapy.
So and now it is done.
Yeah, so and if
let's say T3N3.
Yeah, so the radiation is already over, so there's no scope of giving any further radiation. The practice in my hospital is we normally tend to give some form of adjuvant treatment. We continue the treatment for about total period of 6 months. It includes new adjuvant, as well as the surgery. This is what we follow in my center.
So what, Dr. Rahul, if we get T3N3 after cross regimen, what kind of would you just observe this patient?
There are no definite guidelines that if there is no desired response of that a new adjuvant, but yes, if it is N3 disease, we are all tempted to give chemotherapy because even if after new adjuvant there is N3 disease, we have to give. Okay. The thing is that if we use carbopecli as a cross regimen, I would like to give FOLFOX. I would like to change the drugs, oxaliplatin and IFU or oxaliplatin and capecitabine. But N3 disease, even after NSAT, I would like to give at least 4 months of adjuvant chemo.
Dr. Uma, you are making a point.
Yeah, so my thing would be after neoadjuvant chemoradiation and a surgery with N3 disease, how many patients would actually be fit to receive an adjuvant chemotherapy? The toxicity, I mean, if you look at the practical scenario, the toxicity of this treatment would be very, very high. And right now, I don't see there is any data to say that adjuvant therapy added to this regimen actually benefits survival.
There's no data.
So
we all do that.
Yeah, so I would not be very happy to give chemo at this time.
Viraj, I have a question. I have one question.
I have one more case to discuss, then you will disconnect.
Viraj, small point. Viraj, one small point. Anyway, N3 disease not responding, overall prognosis is very poor. Whether you give therapy after that, no response, he is doomed anyway.
Yes, agreed, sir. No, I would not be happy to give adjuvant chemo. Yeah, no.
So that's the reason why you should have more.
It would probably be more of palliative treatment than anything.
Agreed. Points well taken. Okay, let's go on to the third case. We have 10 more minutes, right, sir? 10 more minutes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir. Great. So third case is a gastric cancer. I see, sir. Dr. Sanket bhai, avi kya shubha mein? Yes, I see you. Right. 48 male, upper abdominal bloating with history of 2 episodes of vomiting in last 1 month. No weight loss, no comorbidities. PS01. Mother had CA breast at age 65. She's still alive. Scopy shows a small 3.5 centimeter nodular mass with 1 centimeter ulcer over pylorus. CT-TAP shows a polypoidal 3 centimeter lesion in the distal stomach with 1.2 centimeter left gastric lymph node. There are few suspicious sub-centimeter celiac lymph nodes as well, but the CT is not able to tell us they are metastatic or not. And no distant mets. Biopsy is poorly differentiated adenocarcinoma. So, Dr. Ashay, let me come to you. PET scan, yes, no. Short answer.
Yeah,
gastric cancer.
Yes.
Gastric cancer poorly differentiated? Yes, no. PET scan.
Yes. We'll do the PET scan and also staging laparoscopy.
I'll come to that. Dr. Rakesh, PET scan, yes, no?
Yeah, for the anatomy, definitely CT scan. For distant metastasis, PET scan. So I'll do a PET scan.
Rahul?
Yes, sure. Yes,
PET scan.
Yes.
Can any of my surgeons tell me, do you do PET scan in a gastric cancer?
I would prefer that. I would not do a PET scan.
I don't. No.
So actually,
I don't do.
Correct.
Because the sensitivity, specificity is very low in stomach cancer.
Agreed, sir. Very well taken. Dr. Jagdish Kothari, if I can ask, this patient, would you consider diagnostic lab as a staging procedure?
Yes. So yes, all patients where except for very early gastric cancer, which is rare in our country. So 95% of our patients, operable stomach cancer patients, will have a diagnostic laparoscopy, which is properly performed as per protocol, where you take a proper cytology as well, is what is required. So two laparoscopy. One is at this time and another would be prior to surgeries.
Okay. Sanket bhai, if I can ask you, let's suppose you do a diagnostic lab. You don't see any nodules, but do you do washings, right? You do washings regularly, peritoneal washing. And peritoneal washing comes positive. What will be your concept for this patient? Patient does not have any peritoneal nodules. Would you still go for the curative treatment?
Yeah, we would still go for curative treatment because peritoneal washings by itself just gives prognostic information. It does not change the surgical plan per se. One gray area, I would say.
Would you consider HIPEC then?
Yes, so that's precisely what I was coming to. That there are a few trials from Japan, 3 to be precise, which have all shown positive results with adjuvant HIPEC in patients who have surgical peritoneal washings positive. So if the patient is willing for it, I would definitely offer HIPEC.
I think it's a very
along with the surgery.
Message to medical oncologist colleagues that just washings. Let's say you have 3 small nodules in the right hepatic area, you would still go for the cure and HIPEC?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
So that's very important message. We have new data coming, like you said, that HIPEC in this small volume peritoneal disease in an adjuvant setting has shown to improve survival. Right, sir?
In fact, there even in signet ring cell tumors, if the peritoneal carcinomatosis index is less than 12, there are 20% 5-year survivals. There is no other treatment available that can give 5-year survival in gastric cancer with peritoneal metastasis.
Excellent. So let me have my medical oncologist, Dr. Ashai. So this patient would go for surgery first or neoadjuvant chemotherapy in your center?
This patient will definitely, after discussion with the surgeons, only if they are going to operate, then we operate. But
they will always operate, doctor. They will always operate. So what will you do?
So basically,
no, not necessary.
Pardon? Hello?
Not necessary. I still believe if the disease is coming out of the cirrhosis, as Sanket has mentioned, if you are not planning a HIPEC along with it, and there is a node beyond, I will do a CT to this patient and then operate.
Yeah, so
the patient has the
chemotherapy.
We have to give neoadjuvant chemotherapy.
Chemotherapy for the surgery.
Neoadjuvant chemotherapy for Rahul, Dr. Ashai, Dr. Rakesh. Would you give neoadjuvant chemo for this? Or
Rakesh is planning. Rakesh Katna is Sanket is doing it. A HIPEC, I will agree that he should go ahead and do it. But we are not used to or not geared up for HIPEC. I would give NSCT first.
So even with HIPEC, we would go for NSCT first.
See the
NACT.
The benefit of Viraj Kinesi, the benefit of neoadjuvant will be there will be 2 benefits. First, downstaging of the disease, and whatever it will help. Second thing is knowing the prognosis in 5 to 10% of the patients. If they flare up the disease with the neoadjuvant chemotherapy also, then don't subject for the surgery.
Rahul, but we don't have a phase 3 data comparing neoadjuvant versus adjuvant approach, right? In stomach cancer.
You don't have it.
No.
So if a surgeon says that I'm going to operate this and you have to give adjuvant Capox or Fofox, you don't have a scientific reason to say no. That's my point.
Yeah, I agree.
So Dr. Rakesh, if I can come to you. this patient, so let me clarify, this patient does not have a DLAP positive, okay? That was a question just for Dr. Sanket. The DLAP is clean, diagnostic lab is clean. This is straightforward T3N1 gastric cancer. If your surgeon says in your center, I'm going to operate, what are your thoughts?
Well,
are you giving adjuvant chemo, or you would still persist saying, I want neoadjuvant chemo?
48-year-old patient has a lesion almost close to the pylorus, poorly differentiated. I would insist that I would give neoadjuvant CT and followed by an assessment.
Dr. Jagdish Kothari, what are your thoughts, sir? Upfront resectable gastric cancer.
No, we certainly give neoadjuvant chemotherapy.
In the surgeon's language, lollipop lesion.
Yeah, but still.
Well, lollipop is a great hanging by the side of 1.2 centimeter node.
Okay, great. Yes. There is no debate. I have an excellent panel, and the panel has agreed that all gastric cancers, especially with the nodal metastasis, even the regional, should go for pre-operative therapy. Rahul, all of my medical oncologists, I want to come in. Do you use MSI in your practice for early gastric or locally advanced gastric cancer in your practice? Dr. Raj, let me start with you.
MSI is used for two things.
Yes.
In a young patient, 48. So, for considering the treatment as present, if I am planning for neoadjuvant chemotherapy, MSI index would not matter. I will give FLOT. But MSI is important in this case for the genetics of this patient. Young patient with a mother of
for you, MSI is for genetic, not for treatment decisions.
For NACT.
If NACT is confirmed. I got your point. Any of my medical oncologists believe that MSI can change the treatment regimen and not for genetic counseling only?
Not as of now. In neoadjuvant setting, no. Yes, in metastatic setting, it's a different story.
Okay. Dr. Jagdish Kothari, can you, what are your thoughts on that?
So, my medical oncologist has taught me that if we always do MSI on gastric biopsy, and if MSI is positive, then he doesn't give in chemotherapy, neoadjuvant is not given. And this is the subgroup of patient, which is 5%. And more proximal, it is more likely to have MSI positive. That's where we would directly go ahead and do surgery.
Yeah. So, Dr. Sanjay Sharma, sir, do you practice this in your center? If
metastatic disease, not for operable lesion, metastatic disease, yes.
No, for operable, I mean.
As I said, we have just started doing it, so we don't have experience. But yes, we have started doing it for further line of treatment if necessary.
So Dr. Piyush Baspa is saying yes for ECF but not for FLOT. I agree with you, Dr. Piyush. But there is a great evidence coming about 200 patient data we have that if you have MSI high, neoadjuvant chemotherapy with ECF or doublet, we don't know about FLOT yet, or even adjuvant CAPOX like in ARTIST or a classic trial, did not make any benefit to patients with MSI high gastric cancer. So at least in our center at HCG Ahmedabad, in last 6 months after this GI ASCO, we have moved towards if patient has MSI high, this patient will go for surgery directly. Okay, last question I have, we have five more minutes. I have a radiation oncologist. Sir, if this patient goes for upfront operation, Dr. Sandeep, I see you smiling. So the question is to you. And the histopath report reads like this, T4N2. And the nodes are 4 out of 14 lymph nodes positive, but margins are all free. What are your thoughts? T4N2, 4 out of 14.
If I look at the guidelines, T4N2, 14 nodes, less than 16 nodes. So I believe it's not a D2 dissection, right?
It can be a pathologist problem also, right?
Okay, it can be. I will go by the surgeons. If it is a D2 dissection, D2 dissection, I would like to put in chemoradiotherapy. But if it is a surgeon says, I would like to avoid the radiation part.
No, but a McDonald's trial can only be given if the patient is in absolute, fantastic general condition.
Yes, absolutely agree, sir.
Not tolerate that. But yes, if I have removed a 50 node and a 6 node, the 4 node positive, I'll be happy Sandeep giving radiation without much problem. I would certainly do it. And 10 years follow-up McDonald trial, only those patients who went a good resection are surviving. Rest all died.
Right. Dr. Ajay, if I can ask you, what are the indications of radiotherapy in gastric cancer, in your opinion?
T4, same what Dr. Sandeep said. N2 if D2 dissection is not done and margin positive.
Great. So that's a good take-home message. Any surgery less than D2, or you have a cut margin positivity. I think so. Great.
So extra capsular spread is what we should add to, because it doesn't qualify for the R0 resection in that situation.
So that means margin is involved. Correct. So that was a great discussion, I think. Does anybody have a question, or else we can move on to the next session?
Now I'd like to invite our chairperson, Dr. Sanjay Sharma.
Thank you.
To give the concluding remarks.
I think that really Viraj conducted it beautifully. We must say that all the panelists participated. Just for youngsters to pass on that two things still not very clear. One in G junction tumors, whether we need to give radiation therapy along with chemotherapy upfront like cross or FLOT. At the moment we don't have result, but as the previous speakers have given in the lectures, all those 3 trials, the trial from Tata Memorial Hospital is on. We'll decide whether we need to give both of them. So at the moment of time, the jury is still out for that. Regarding stomach cancer surgery upfront or surgery later on, that debate is still persisting. If you believe that in laparoscopy, nodes seen now, apparently you can go ahead and operate first and then give chemotherapy if the node is positive first. Or there are other schools of thought, maybe I'm included, even Jagdish Bhai included, that if there are nodes and there is a node around with external extension to give upfront chemotherapy, as mentioned in David Cunningham's trial, those patients do better, and we believe in that theory. The still jury is out for all that. That is important. Regarding advanced cases of peritoneal shielding, as Sanket mentioned, there is a definite role for this group of patients, peritoneal disease, to consider for a radical surgery with peritonectomy and HIPAC, and there is an increased survival up to 20%. So I must thank the other panelists for making it very lively. And thanks Tejinder and Advait for inviting all of us. Thank you.
So we start up with our next session.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite our moderator, Dr. Tejinder Singh, Senior Consultant, Medical Oncologist at Apollo Hospital. Over to you, sir.
So now we are going to have a debate on a topic which I think everyone wants to listen is regarding the FLOT and cross. This is going on for last 2-3 years. Radiation guys, medical oncologist guy. Luckily, medical oncologists are part of both the treatment plan. But lots of things have happened. We are now approaching. Lots of things have happened. We are now going into an era where we are looking that these 2 regimens. FLOT has come just a year back, but it has gained so much of prominence. But yes, we are now going into an era where people have started basically doing a trial among these 2 different regimens. Maybe the results will come. So we are going to have a debate for the FLOT. Basically, Dr. Piyush Bajpayee is going to speak. He's a senior medical oncologist from Manipal Hospital, Delhi. And for the cross, Rohit Pai is going to speak. He works in Bombay Hospital. He's a medical oncologist in Bombay Hospital. So over to Piyush. After we finish the debate, we'll have 10 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll take up the questions from the audience also. Over to Piyush.
Thank you, Dr. Tejinder. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Can I have my slides, please? I'm trying to share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, my my job is to speak about the current management of adenocarcinoma esophagus and GE junctions, and I would be speaking that the way to go forward is the FLOT therapy, and I'm not really impressed by the cross results. Therefore, I am going to speak for FLOT, and we know that the survival of esophageal adenocarcinoma or GE junction, just surgery and no chemotherapy given, the overall survival is dismal as the stage advances. So I would be in my slides covering evolution towards FLOT, the cross trial in brief, and comparison between the two trials. And there might be points by my opponent speaker that FLOT is not very tolerable, so I had a case to show. So we know this particular two trials, the initial ones, the MAGIC and the French trials. So MAGIC was the one which gave us ECF, and the French showed that probably you can do without epirubicin. And these were the survival results, which were encouraging. Just to note, if you see the ECF during that period, probably
Sorry to interrupt
the
you, sir.
survival.
Piyush sir, exactly the slide is being operated from our end. So can you just tell the next so that our operator will change?
Okay.
So exactly.
Next slide. Yeah. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Vidyut?
Yeah. So next slide, please. Yeah. So I just spoke about the MAGIC trial and the French trial, where I just spoke that probably epirubicin role was sort of questionable with the French trial because probably more of GE junction tumors over here. Next slide, please. These were the impressive survival results. And this was the sort of distribution, 25% of GE junction tumors in cancers in MAGIC trial, and nearly 60%, if you look at the French one, 60% were GE junction and 25% adenocarcinoma esophagus. So here, both the trials showing good survival results. Next slide, please. Yeah, so many attempts thereafter to improve these results, but then they failed, and they were adding radiotherapy to MAGIC regime post-operatively, adding bevacizumab, or adding post-operative ECF to chemo-RT. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we know this FLOT4 AIRO study design, and it had a good number of gastroesophageal junction patients, and it was clinically T2 to T4, and 4 cycles of FLOT, thereafter surgery, thereafter followed by 4 cycles of FLOT was the plan. This was the comparator arm to prove it beyond what we have. The current standard during that period was ECF. So FLOT was a step forward when these, next slide please. When these survival results came into the publication, there was definitely an increment of nearly 15 months, and that was pretty impressive, and good 3-year overall survival rates with FLOT regimen. It improved complete resection rates. It did downsize well as compared to ECF, apart from the survival. So next slide, please. And if you look at the subset analysis, all subgroups were consistently benefiting from it. And if you look at the last two encircled subsets, the Barrett esophagus and the Signet cell also were significantly benefiting. The trend was towards the FLOT showing the benefit. Next slide, please. As I told, the Barrett esophagus, the results were relatively impressive with FLOT. Next slide, please. So we know this trial, the cross trial, and the randomization was between surgery and or chemoradiation pre-op, and thereafter surgery after 4 to 6 weeks. And the regimen of chemotherapy and radiotherapy are given in this slide. There was definitely improvement in the survival curve, what we have seen. So next slide, please. Hello. Next slide, please. Yeah. So we saw this. Now look at the squamous cell carcinoma subgroup over here. Hugely, this particular subset probably lifting the curves quite well. Adenocarcinoma, you can see over there, just lagging behind. But yes, although it did benefit as well. Look at the score of performance status. So the PS0 benefiting better. Next slide, please. So just a comparison, not a fair thing to do, but then a cross-trial comparison. This is what we are here for. So you see the PS1 patient, slightly worse performance status, more in FLOT arm. And likewise, if you look at the nodal state, N1 nodal status, more in the FLOT arm. Next slide, please. So if you look at the various aspects, margin-free rejection, because cross is something which is more of a localized therapy. So margin-free rejection quite comparable. And if you look at the various important subsets and the hazard ratios, the important subsets were probably not reported in the cross. So Barrett esophagus, we really do not know how it responded. Actually, the subset analysis not done. And of course, the performance status, the older subset, look at that. FLOT, there is data to say that you can actually deliver it if in case your patient is a geriatric patient. Next slide, please. So tolerance issues, probably this is my oldest patient, and this is the scan this week after 4 cycles of FLOT. She did quite well actually. The probable change of changing the dose in the FLOT of 50 mg per meter square of docetaxel 2 weekly has made FLOT deliverable quite well. Next slide, please. And of course, the growth factor support. So I would say that it is like if we are focusing on this disease pattern, it is this proverb that you can't see the forest for the trees. The failures are basically systemic, and with FLOT, you are able to deliver the systemic chemotherapy. Next slide, please. So there is a large and consistent data set of prospective randomized trial to provide definitive proof of the efficacy of perioperative chemotherapy, and it is working best in the G junction tumor. PCR rates are quite comparable with chemoradiation for FLOT, and definitely it is better than ECF, but for cross, the comparator arm is just surgery. So I would rest my case over there. Thank you. Thank you to the organizers.
Thank you, Piyush. Now we'll have a talk on cross trial by Dr. Rohit Pai. So hopefully after the discussion, Rohit will say that we should give cross to everyone. Right, Rohit?
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. I will not be saying that, sir. No medical oncologist will say that. But yes. So obviously.
So we have to. You know what happens? That even in a cross, they require the help of the medical oncologist.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much to the organizers. Thank you, Tejendra sir, for inviting me. So so the debate is FLOT versus cross. So rather than a dogmatic statement passed by Dr. Piyush, I have titled the debate. I am speaking for cross. There is ideally it should have been given to a radiation oncologist, according to me. But here goes. Next slide, please. So I'll start with the ESMO guidelines, and I think Dr. Piyush also agreed with me that in squamous cell histology, esophageal cancer, there is no role for neoadjuvant chemotherapy per se as far as the data goes. So here we have the guidelines for squamous cell esophageal cancer. The two options are neoadjuvant chemoradiation followed by surgery or definitive chemoradiation in the squamous histology. As far as the adenocarcinoma goes, yes, we have both the options, perioperative CT or we have the neoadjuvant chemoradiation. Okay, next slide, please. So this was the meta-analysis recently published of 25 RCTs of esophageal cancers of more than 5,000 patients, and it showed superior disease-free survival and overall survival favoring neoadjuvant chemoradiation versus surgery at 3 years. You can see the hazard ratio at the bottom of your screen. It was significant, and it was there was no OS survival benefit at 5 years. But if we look at neoadjuvant chemotherapy only, there was no survival benefit at 5 years or 3 years. This was obviously a mixed bag of patients, but a very large sample size and a recently published meta-analysis. Next slide, please. So, a FLOT trial, so we have already gone through this. It randomized patients between two chemotherapy regimens. So, one was FLOT and the other was ECF. So, and it consisted of gastroesophageal junction tumors and gastric cancer patients, either locally, either T2 or T4, or locally advanced tumors, node positive. So basically, this is not a comparison between chemo versus surgery or chemo versus any other thing. This is comparison of two chemotherapy regimens that is important. Next slide, please. And the results were very impressive, both the disease-free survival as well as the overall survival. The delta was 15 months. So the median overall survival was 50 months with FLOT versus 35 months with ECF. Next slide, please. The CROSS trial compared neoadjuvant chemoradiotherapy plus surgery versus surgery alone, and it consisted of patients of both adenocarcinoma as well as squamous cell cancers, and it included patients of esophagus and the GE junction, and the trial arm received chemoradiation with weekly paclitaxel with preoperative radiation of 41.4 gray, followed by resection. Next slide, please. This also showed that there is a very good survival benefit with neoadjuvant chemoradiation as compared to surgery alone. Median OS was 48.6 months versus 24 months. And next slide, please. The squamous next slide, please. The squamous histology. So here you can see the curves separated by the histology. So if we see the squamous cell cancer, the two curves, the blue ones and the red ones. So the dotted blue one is the squamous, the dotted one is the squamous with surgery. So if you can see that the difference between the squamous cell cancer is much higher than that of adenocarcinoma, which is the point, and which is actually the point we are discussing today. So in the CROSS trial, the survival in squamous cell cancer was much higher with neoadjuvant chemoradiation than with the adenocarcinoma histology. So median OS in SCC 81.6 months versus 24.1 months, extremely high. Next slide, please. So squamous, let us not debate, and we always say that we don't do cross trial comparison, but this is a cross trial comparison. That is the first statement I would like to make. We are comparing experimental arms of two different trials, and the trials have been conducted in two different time points also. So FLOT, the trial was conducted from 2010 to 2015. CROSS, it was 2004 to 2008. It was 716 patients, 356 in FLOT, and the CROSS was a smaller patient sample size, 368 patients and 178 in the experimental arm. This FLOT was obviously all adenocarcinoma, and CROSS was 75% adenocarcinoma and around 23% squamous, 2% large cell undifferentiated. In FLOT, the total GEJ junction tumors were 56%, 23% were type 1 GEJ, 33% were type 2. And in the CROSS trial, 58% were distal 1/3 of esophagus and 22% were gastroesophageal junction tumor in the experimental arm. FLOT, very importantly, 8% T4 tumors were included. T4 was not the eligibility criteria for CROSS. In FLOT, 78% patients were node positive as compared to CROSS, 65% patients were node positive. So briefly, it seems that if more bulky tumors were there in FLOT, more T4, more N1 as compared to CROSS. But very importantly, we have 44% gastric cancer patients which do much better than gastroesophageal junction tumors. That also needs to be remembered. Next, please. Also, one more thing in CROSS was that they had excluded tumors more than 8 centimeters in length and 5 centimeters wide. So bulk again came into play in the CROSS. This is the comparison. Just one slide before, please. Once, just move the slide. Move this. Go back, please. Go back. Next. Okay. So this is the comparison of surgical outcomes. So in FLOT, 90% patients could receive the preoperative chemotherapy or 4 cycles of FLOT, but only 50%. So this is a German trial, very strong, healthy, fit patients. Only 50% post-op could complete FLOT. In CROSS, the therapy was given only preoperatively. So 95% could complete NACTRT. 94% patients in each of the groups could undergo resectional surgery. So there was a very good rate of patients reaching the stage of surgery. 84% R0 resection in FLOT. There is no separate gastroesophageal junction data. And 92% R0, there is no adeno data. And I know Dr. Piyush showed a 82% R0 in CROSS, which included the entire intention to treat population. 30-day mortality was comparable between the two, close to 2% in FLOT versus 3% in CROSS. So in this, what I feel is that CROSS has not given separate adeno data, and squamous histology has definitely played a part in the improved outcome, definitely in the CROSS trial. But we have to remember that FLOT also has gastric tumors, so the resection and the ease of resection is much easier in gastric tumors as compared to GEJ. So there have been trials having, like the bevacizumab trial, the STO3, which showed that the proximal you go, the increased rate of R1 resection and the R0 resection goes down. So that also is very important in interpreting this data. Next point, next slide, please. What was the post-operative histopath? So 20 in FLOT, 25% T1 tumor versus 15% in ECF. So that was the comparator. In CROSS, it was 39% T0 and 10% T1. So obviously T0 was not there because it was surgery alone. But in surgery alone, there were 8% T1 tumors. The non-negative status, which is very important, it was 49% in FLOT versus 41% in ECF. And in CROSS, you can see that there is a significant nodal downstaging with the caveat that the bulk was slightly less in CROSS, 69% versus 26% in surgery alone. So significant difference. So, and PATH-CR was 16% versus 29%. So 16% in the FLOT experimental arm and 29% in the CROSS. So basically, both of these regimens downstage the disease. But no negative status is associated with a better outcome post-surgery. Very important. Squamous cell and less bulky tumor in CROSS, so that is definitely the PATH-CR rates were driven by that too, but the difference is significant. And very importantly, what I feel is just looking at PATH-CR is not important in perioperative chemo because nodal downstaging rather than a PATH-CR is a better predictor of outcome per se. Next slide, please. Next, please. Okay, so these were the significant toxicities. FLOT had 51% neutropenia, 18% infection, 10% diarrhea. These were grade 3, grade 4 toxicities in more than 5% of the patient population, and sensory neuropathy. As compared to ECF, which was the comparator, nausea, vomiting, and thromboembolic disease was less. The caveat here is they did not use prophylactic GCSF. I'm sure that everyone must be using in their practice prophylactic GCSF. And very importantly, only 50% of the patients could actually complete the post-operative part of FLOT. As compared to this, the CROSS trial, the CROSS toxicities are much better. If you go to see neutropenia 2%, diarrhea 1%, nausea 3%, and all the therapy given preoperatively, and more than 90% patients could complete that preoperative therapy. Next point, please. Next slide, please. So what about the survival? The median OS was 50 months in the FLOT and 43.2 months in the CROSS. So basically, the point is numerically superior, but we have to consider that the surgical and the radiation which was done, they were two different eras. So 2004 to 2000, early 2000s versus later part. So definitely they also have played a role in the outcome. 3-year overall survival was absolutely similar in both the parts. Gastric cancer definitely has a better outcome than GEJ pure. And in CROSS, the caveat with this is squamous cell histology has a better outcome with chemoradiation per se. there was lesser bulky tumor, but again offset by the older data set per se. Next slide. So there are a few trials comparing these two modalities, but there is no trial comparing the exact protocol versus per se. So what have they shown? So this is the NeoRes study, a small study. The primary endpoint was pathological CR. Again, the R0 resection rates with CT-RT were higher as compared to CT alone. The PathCR rates were also higher. So 28% versus 9%. The chemotherapy used in this was cisplatin 5-FU backbone. But as far as the survival goes, the study was underpowered. There was no difference in OS. And surgical complications were more severe, but not more frequent in patients treated with chemoradiation. Next slide, please. This is the old POET trial for gastroesophageal junction tumor, again using cisplatin 5-FU as the chemotherapy backbone with radiation. Again, sort of similar things. PathCR improved definitely than the overall survival. So per se, not significant.
Rohit, your voice is not audible now.
Am I audible, sir?
Right, it's okay now.
Yeah. So yes, next slide, please. Next slide, please. So again, there was a propensity match analysis with neoadjuvant chemotherapy plus surgery versus neoadjuvant chemoradiation plus surgery. This was published in Annals in 2017, and they matched patients with resectable esophageal, severe type 1 and 2 junctional cancers with both the protocols. And again, it is showing that the PathCR rates are more in neoadjuvant chemoradiation. The R0 resection rates are more in neoadjuvant chemoradiation. But the post-operative leak, very importantly, is also more. So post-operative mortality in terms of leak is more than this. There is no survival benefit. So I have myself said that PathCR, I don't think that it is a very significant predictor of outcome in this subset of cancers. But nodal downstaging, important, but R0 rates, very importantly, are very significantly associated with outcome. So there is almost a doubling of survival with R0 versus R1. And especially if we feel that the margin is threatened, cross protocol still remains a valid option. Next slide, please. So the issue of completing the planned treatment. So if we look at the right side, the light column, the trials which had a pre-operative treatment arm, you look at the completion rates, they were reasonably okay, good, 80%, in some 90%. As compared to that, if you look at the adjuvant trials, the main trials having a subset of treatment after gastric cancer or esophageal cancer or GEJ cancer surgery, the rate of completing the treatment is much lower, and in FLOT 50% of patients did not complete the planned protocol. So what was the outcome of those 50% is very important, because they have GEJ, they have gastric, but 50% did not complete the planned treatment. And what is the outcome of that subset of patients is also very important. Next slide, please. So what about the Indian setting? So sir shared his own case. So this is preoperative chemoradiation in carcinoma esophagus from like Indo-American Cancer Center has shared their data. 50 patients, retrospective analysis, 10 GEJ, 38 squamous cell cancers. 78% have received conventional RT, not IMRT or any newer modalities. 30% had paclitaxel as their chemo backbone. Cisplatin 5-FU in 16. So again, hello, am I audible? Cisplatin 5-FU in the other 16. 2 patients had progressive disease. The rest 48 underwent surgery, and all were R0. And 39.6% PathCR rates were reported. Obviously, more squamous cancers, more PathCR, and definitely paclitaxel regimen was associated with more PathCR. So this is the Indian setting. So what this slide shows that in India, preoperative chemoradiation followed by surgery is definitely feasible in certain subset of patients in this subgroup. Next, please. So future trials, I think we have already discussed. So ISOPEC, which will be comparing FLOT versus CROSS essentially. Next, please. Next slide, please. And NeoAEGIS, which the ECF versus, it was planned for ECF versus CROSS, but now it is again going to be FLOT versus CROSS. This will hopefully settle the issue. Next slide, please. So my conclusion is, I think perioperative chemotherapy is essential in locally advanced esophageal cancer and GEJ tumors. It improves survival. So that is number one. Some form of perioperative therapy in locally advanced definitely improves survival. Squamous cell histology, clear data supporting cross protocol. Adenocarcinoma of esophagus and gastroesophageal junction tumor is much more controversial, and both FLOT and CROSS are valid options. CROSS is favored because of nodal downstaging. There is significant better R0 resection rate. The delivery of treatment is better because 50% could not control the FLOT protocol in the trial setting. Lesser toxicities as compared to FLOT in the CROSS regime. Thank you.
Very nice, Rohit. I think you have done a very good work by presenting. I think Dr. Sanjay, so based on the presentation which Rohit has given, you think that you will go back from FLOT to CROSS now? Sir, your voice is not audible. Hello? Sir, your voice is not audible. Hello?
Doctor sir, Tejinder sir, voice is audible, sir. Your voice
sorry.
is audible.
Okay,
No,
sorry.
Sanjay sir, yeah.
Anyway, lovely presentation by both of them. Tejinder, I still am not very sure. As I said, jury is still out. Let's see and wait the result of those two coming trial or Tata trial. The reason is only one. If you go and see the patients which are operated at Netherlands, and their cases of squamous cancer, they are mostly T2 with proliferative region. Even if you don't give chemotherapy, trust me, they will respond only with radiation therapy, and they will have all RG relief. Our patients are cicatrized, totally full circumference, transmural disease. It is very difficult to get the RG resection. If you have a proliferative region, unfortunately, I'm talking of ancient methodology of proliferative, means gross pathological features. In fact, in modern era, it should be more biological. But it is true. In India, more patients are totally obstructed, transmural disease. They do not respond to CDRT, and it produces more stuck in our pleura. And non-trained thoracic surgeons. In India, most of the surgery done by esophageal surgeons are not trained for thoracic surgery. So it's very difficult for them to go across the thing. As I said, since we were trained in thoracic surgery, our RG resection is almost practically all patients. So to me, it doesn't make a difference whether I have received radiation or not. An Indian patient with subclinical infection, I'm a little worried. My results are, I have got a 0% leak rate and a 1% mortality. Why should I change if the survival is the same? So, but I can believe that with modern radiation therapy, especially for a middle lower third patient, there is nothing wrong in giving a concurrent CT-RT like rectal cancer. Rectal cancer, the mortality is not there. But in thoracic cancers, if you go beyond, you have either recurrent angioplasty or you have aortic injuries or you have bronchial injuries, which is not easy for a common non-trained surgeons to operate. That's what I have seen, but I am waiting for the results. For me, it doesn't make a difference anymore now. With enough experience, I still believe that radiation also would do a good thing. But I am happy with my results, so I have no reason to change. But I will not disagree that yes, in certain cases of proliferative lesions, CT-RT like cross trial is a good idea. But only one question to Dr. Pai.
Yeah.
If you have, for example, see the modern technique. I have cases now, middle, lower third cases.
Yes, sir.
In a cross trial up to carina or just beyond carina. There is a lymph node sitting at the top of the subclavian artery, which is a right 106 node. According to our classification of right recurrent angina node, how will you include this in your cross-trial radiation therapy? Tell me, are you going to change it or not? You're going to change the radiation field. So how do you in such cases?
So the debate mode is on or off, sir?
It's on.
No, it's a debate mode. It's a debate mode. I'm speaking for Piyush.
So basically, sir, a very tricky situation, and the toxicities and everything will increase.
Is it, Dr. Sanjay, is it adeno or squamous? Is it adeno or
cancer?
It is squamous or adeno?
Yeah, it's a squamous cancer or radiation.
Squamous.
No, even if you take both the histology, it doesn't make a difference.
Histology, anyway.
There's a single node in a G junction or a lower third esophagus.
Yeah, Rohit, you answer it. I think it's a squamous wide field.
So squamous wide field, yes, the point is the field will be wide, but looking at the squamous cancer and the rate of pathological CR following squamous cancer, and there is an option of definitive chemoradiation also. So there are trials looking at weight watch in squamous histology. So definitely cross trial even in this case might be an option according to me. I am not being obviously the toxicities because of the wild field are expected to be higher. Radiation oncologists may weigh in here, but definitely I won't per se reject it totally. As far as adenocarcinoma goes, there is no per se data to support wait and watch. Some surgical therapy needs to be given. I would probably consider like maybe FLOT will be in my mind. Even though the FLOT trial did not include esophageal cancers, it included gastric and GEJ.
So a lot of things are required. Piyush, I think you are smiling now. I think I need a rebuttal from you. You have to put the speaker. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, sir, Dr. Sharma, for just making that point. But anyways, my choice for squamous cell, we discuss in multidisciplinary board, and it's the radiation oncologist along with us who take the call, and it's the cross trial protocol for squamous cell. But again, having said that, it's not always easy to give every patient the cross trial, though the toxicities, and if such a large field we are talking about, it might really not be possible in an elderly individual. So that's what I feel.
You feel in this doublet? Doublet might work over there also.
Might not be
feasible. So
yes,
I think
you have to cut down on
the things. So now Piyush, one simple question is that which are the subset? You know, this was the same thing which I asked Viraj when his panel discussion was going on. I have a question for Rohit also and Piyush also. Which particular subset you will start looking for giving cross? Which subset you will go for FLOT?
So G junction is definitely one subset where so far the subset analysis shows that the results are favorable if you are giving neoadjuvant therapy. So that definitely yes, I would consider for FLOT.
So you will look into histology and you will look into the
histology well differentiated.
You will look into CVET also? More gastric you will go for FLOT, or more gastric you will go for cross? Or you look into age also?
Okay, so if we are out of the debate thing, so
it's out of the debate.
Yeah, so there is a point against FLOT that probably the homogeneity of the mutation, there was more heterogeneous mutation pattern in the upper CVETs, which was one, or esophageal adenocarcinoma as compared to G junction. So that's why probably the pathological response rates were more. So that is the molecular analysis that one paper is there. So G junction definitely is for FLOT.
G junction is for FLOT. Rohit, I think now.
So I feel, sir, more proximal tumors. So as I said, the proximal you go, the risk of margin positivity, etc., increases. Perhaps I will consider neoadjuvant chemoradiation in a non-bulky tumor, sir. Because the FLOT, the cross trial excluded T4. There was a length and width difference also. 8 and 5. So bulky tumor, bulky nodes, definitely FLOT. In adenocarcinoma, I will go. If it's a non-bulky tumor, if it's a localized tumor, it's a more proximal lesion. Squamous, definitely. In adeno also, I would consider cross.
Yeah, I think Dr. Jagdish has put up a very good question. Yeah.
So, Dr. Tejinder, I have a couple of comments to make. When we compare the, complete pathology PET CR rate, which is shown as in cross, there is more PET CR compared to the FLOT. Now, one important point here is that after cross, generally the surgery is done after about 6 weeks or more. And that's why longer you wait, the PET CR could be more versus FLOT where the PET CR rate is low. That is number one. And number two, one thing which is blamed in FLOT is that post-operatively 50% of the patients could not be given post-op chemo. Now the time has changed, when this was done and now lot of minimally invasive surgeries are done, and more patients are now eligible for the adjuvant chemotherapy. So these are the 2 points which I wanted to make out of this debate.
Yeah, very nicely highlighted, sir. I think the future is going to now go more into the PATH-CR. I agree, but PATH-CR day by day, the way we look into PATH-CR with following CTRT and following FLOT is the duration is quite different in the CTRT arm. But I think the one thing which is going to make cross slightly, what I do normally is that CVAD1, G junction, more proximal, less bulky, I go for cross basically, but more bulky, high nodal burden status, we normally go for FLOT in our institute. And the biggest problem which I face with FLOT is that post surgery, I think the ability to finish the chemotherapy is very difficult. So, but day by day, I think things are changing. We are now moving ahead with that nodal downstaging, which might give us more better idea in looking at how it is going to look into the overall survival. So this debate will continue, but luckily we have two arms which are at least giving us a chance to utilize it. Nobody will be able to predict which area it is going to make a difference. The thing what is required is a good multidisciplinary board meeting between the radiation, medical and the surgical, and accordingly take a call. It's basically more of institution, I will say, rather than individualistic decision. Thank you for all. I think it was a very nice discussion. We had a very nice panel discussion. Thank you, Piyush, and thank you, Rohit. Both of you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
We'll close the debate session. Over to Jainam.
Yes, sir. I thank all the faculties and participants for taking out the valuable time to attend the first 2 days of the Indian Gastrointestinal Symposium. Please join us back on 28th and 29th August for part 2 of this symposium, where we'll cover hepatobiliary and pancreatic cancer.